This is a little bit of light, waiting Moshiach and Shemoneh Esrei in the blessing of Ircha, part 2. So the blessing, as we started off with last week, begins Yerushalayim Ircha Barachamim Tashuv. Yerushalayim, your city, you shall return it with mercy. V'sishkain b'seicha kasha dibarta. You shall dwell in it as you have spoken. Where did Hashem say kasha dibarta, as you have spoken? So we find in the book of Zechariah, Perek Ches, chapter 8, Pasuk Gimel, verse 3. Koyamar Hashem, so says Hashem, Shapti al Tzion, I will have returned to Zion, V'shachanti Esrei-V'Liyrushalayim, and I shall dwell in the midst of Jerusalem. So this is what we have. This is kasher dibarta. Hashem says, I will return to Zion, and I will dwell in it. I will dwell in Yerushalayim. That is where Hashem has told us that he will dwell in it. Now, what are these two steps? It says, so says Hashem, I shall return to Zion, and shall dwell within Jerusalem. So the commentary of the Malbim explains, Shafti al Tzion, Dati lashuv al Tzion. My intention is to return to Zion, which means the place of the Beis HaMikdash, the place of the Holy Temple. Shetia shchinasi kvu Hashem k'mikedem. That my divine presence shall be established there as was originally by the first Beis HaMikdash. V'gam v'shachanti b'Esrei-V'Liyrushalayim, and also I shall dwell within Jerusalem, bein ha'am, amongst the nation, amongst the people. Shetia shchinasi b'seicham, my divine presence shall be in their midst. V'shatashuv aleim hanavua, and prophecy will return to them. V'akadusha, and sanctity. V'chol machmadeha, and all the other precious things that come with that. So we have Hashem returning to Zion, the place of the Beis HaMikdash, and Hashem is saying, and I will dwell within Yerushalayim, means within the people. And we find this pointed out by the construction of the Mishkan. It says, V'asu li mikdash, they shall make for me a sanctuary, v'shachanti b'socham, and I shall dwell in their midst. And the commentaries point out, it doesn't say, make for me a sanctuary, v'shachanti b'socham, and I shall dwell in it, in the sanctuary, but rather, make for me a sanctuary, and I will dwell in them, in their midst. Through the Beis HaMikdash, Hashem dwells in our midst. So we have the Shekhinah resting in the Mikdash, in the place of the Beis HaMikdash, and with that, it rests within the people. And as the Malbim says, that manifests itself in the returning of prophecy, of sanctity, and all the good that comes with that. Now, when we talk about the Shekhinah resting in the Beis HaMikdash, my understanding of that has always been that means that Shekhinah is an experience of Hashem's presence. And the Beis HaMikdash is the place where we experience Hashem's presence in the greatest level. But it's from there and through there that we experience the Shekhinah within our midst in every facet of our life, which is what we're praying for. Now, when we talk about Hashem saying, as a Malbim says, that Hashem says that my intention is to return to Zion and establish my Shekhinah there and establish, should I get the words right? And establish my Shekhinah there as was originally. Rav Shimon Shua points out that this idea of Hashem's Shekhinah being present in the Beis HaMikdash is actually initiated with the resumption of the offering of the karbanos, of the sacrifices. That will be what will initiate the return of the Shekhinah to the Beis HaMikdash. And as he points out from the Gemara in Zvachim, Samach Beis Amud Aleph, 62a, that the Gemara actually tells us, Makriv and Alpha B'Shem bias. We can bring sacrifices even though there is no bias, even though there is no actual Beis HaMikdash. as long as we know the place of where the Mizbeach, where the altar is supposed to be, we can bring sacrifices. So what initiates Hashem's Shekhinah to return to the Beis HaMikdash is the resumption of the karbanos, of the sacrificials, of the service of the sacrifices. Sorry about that. Is the service of the sacrifices, and that could actually happen just as long as we know where the Mizbeach, the altar, is supposed to be. Excuse me one second. Apologize. Okay. Now, so as I just said, the Shekhinah, what initiates the return of the Shekhinah to the Mikdash, to the Beis HaMikdash, is the resumption of the sacrifices. That can happen without the actual rebuilding of the Beis HaMikdash, as long as we know where the altar is meant to be. And that we can only know through a prophet. A prophet will have to point out to us exactly that place. But there is a very exact place as to where the altar is meant to be, and it can't move from there. And let me read to you how the Rambam, how Maimonides puts it. This is Rambam in Hilchas Beis HaBechira, the laws that apply to the temple. This is Perek Sheni, the second chapter. HaMizbeach mekayim mechuven b'yoser. The place of the altar is very, very exact. And you may not change it, may not move it from that place ever. Shenemar is a Mizbeach lo'el Yisrael. This is the altar for the burnt offerings for Israel. Now, what is so special about this place of where the Mizbeach, where the altar sits, that I can't move from there? So Rambam explains. Umasoires biyad hakol. He calls it a tradition that everybody has. Shahamakim shabana b'David u'shlamei hamizbeach. The place where King David and King Solomon built the altar, B'Gerben Arona, on the threshing floor of Arona. In Divrei Hayamim Aleph, it's described, in the Chronicles 1, it's described how the prophet told David HaMelech, and even before the Beis HaMikdash was built, to build an altar in a certain place. He's supposed to go to the threshing floor that belonged to Arona HaYavusi. That's how he's described, Arona HaYavusi. And there he is to buy that area, that threshing floor, and build an altar there. And it was in that place that Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon, when he built the Beis HaMikdash, built the altar for the Beis HaMikdash on that very spot. So when the Rambam says we have a tradition that the place where David and Shlomo built the altar, Hu HaMakaim Shabana by Avraham Mizbeach, that's the same place where Avraham built the altar, V'akal Yitzchak, and he bound Yitzchak on it. That was where Akedas Yitzchak took place, the binding of Yitzchak took place. Hu HaMakaim, and it's the same place, Shabana by Noach, Kshiyatz ben Ateva, when Noach came out from the ark after the flood was over and the earth had dried up. Torah tells us he brought sacrifices. So the altar that he built was in that spot, in that place. V'hu HaMizbeach shikruv by Kayin v'Hevel. And this is also the altar, the place of the altar of Kayin and Hevel. Right? We have in Bereshis, we talks about how Kayin brought his gift to Hashem and Hevel brought his gift to Hashem. They were both offered on an altar. So here again, we say, actually the wording is, that was the place where Noach built the ark, right, this is the place where Noach built the altar when he came out of the ark, for Mizbeach, and that's the altar, that Cain and Hevel offered. Adam Harishan carbon, and it was in that place that Adam Harishan offered a sacrifice, Kishanivra, when he was created, Umisham Nivra, and it's from that place, that area he was created. The dirt from which he was created from came from the place of where the Mizbeach was meant to be situated. V'amru Chachamim, as our sages say, Adam mimakim kaparase nivra. Man was created from the place of his atonement, from the place where he gets atonement, referring to the altar upon which the sacrifice of Kabbanis are brought, that's where he was created from. So this specific place of where the altar is meant to be has special reasons for it, as we just described. And this is what we mean when we say that we talk about Hashem is going to dwell in it. Hashem is going to return his Shekhinah to the Mikdash. Our prayers are that he's going to bring back the karbonis, the offering of the sacrifices will be resumed. And it will be resumed, and through that resumption, Hashem's divine presence will return. But we need to know the exact place where the altar is meant to be, and for that we need a prophet. So our prayers, Yerushalayim Ircha Barachamim Toshuv, to Yerushalayim, your city, you shall return with mercy. V'sishkan b'seicha kasher dibarta, and dwell in it, as you have said. Your Shekhinah, divine presence, should return and be present in the Beis HaMikdash through the resumption of these sacrifices, which again comes about through the resumption of through the resumption of the sacrifices, which can come even without an actual Beis HaMikdash, as long as we know the place where the altar is, which will be told through a prophet. And then Hashem's divine presence will rest amongst all the people. There will be that special experience of the Shekhinah in our lives in every facet. And as the Malbim says, prophecy will return, sanctity will return, and all the precious things that come along with that. May we be able to see that very soon. Thank you for listening. This has been a little bit of light. Have a wonderful Shabbos.